Hey folks, welcome back, and thank you so much for continuing to hang out with us as we celebrate the Amazon Aurora 10-year anniversary. Can you believe it?
I cannot.
Neither can I. My name is Adrian San Miguel. I am a principal partner enterprise architect here at AWS, working with Aurora for quite some time. But my co-host Aditya, you got a bit of a history there too, don't you?
I do. And I am a principal database specialist solutions architect, and I get to work on Aurora every single day. But it is not about us, is it, today? It is about Aurora and its innovation. And we're going to continue down that path, and we are going to learn a little more about Strands and MCP. Are you ready?
I am ready.
Well, to tell us more about that, we have Ben. Ben, why don't you introduce yourself?
Awesome. Hey, Aditya. Thanks for having me. I'm Ben. I'm a developer on the DSQL team working with Mark. And yeah, I'm excited to be here to be talking about DSQL and the MCP server integration that we have.
And we did talk about MCP and Strands and GenAI and LLM. I call myself acronym guy, but I'm getting lost. Why don't you give us a little bit of a tease about what all of those things mean before we get to the demos?
Yeah, for sure. Let's get into it. There's so much hype thrown around nowadays. There's so many of these different terms and different words. Mm-hmm. Agents, when we talk about them, how I like to think of them is something that you program with natural language. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, it's all just code. You're putting code together. You've got some goal that you'd like to achieve. And when we're designing systems, when we're building systems, these are just another tool in the toolkit that we can use.
Sure.
So that's what's really exciting me about getting stuck in with Strands. And it's a really simple way to get working with these agents.
And while we have you, I just wanted to ask one question.
Yeah.
Is that I get this quite often, and folks say, well, MCP and API, what's the difference?
Yeah, that's a really good one. So MCP is a flexible protocol for discovering APIs. Now, when you think of standard APIs, you have like a model file. You have something that's pretty static. You tell a client what's available. Right. You tell a server what's available, or the server defines what's available. And then those two can communicate using that model. Now with Strands, with MCP, it's a way of a server kind of flexibly advertising, here's what my API model is. Here's what you can give me as input, in the form of JSON or whatever input it takes. And here's what I'm going to return to you when you make those calls.
Yeah, and I think the key is you don't need to know the API. You just ask the questions, and then the GenAI actually does the work to discovering the API.
That's kind of the best part. Yeah. It takes a lot of the legwork out of it.
All right, so I got to put on my old SecOps hat. Is it secure? I mean, question for the chat: how should you go about securing your Aurora DSQL MCP if you're thinking about going out and building it? And Ben, I'd love to put you on the spot and see what you got for us.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we can take a look at that. So I'm in demo mode, so I like to live dangerously.
Oh, yeah. Let's do it.
But when you are working on these demos, okay, let me show you what it looks like to interact with Aurora DSQL's MCP server. So off in the background, I've gone and I've set this up so I can interact with it. A lot of you may be familiar with your IDEs if you've got QChat, or maybe you're using CLine. You might recognize how it looks to set up an MCP server for one of these new AI integrations. Mm-hmm. See, it's pretty simple. I put in my cluster, I put in my region, I put in the user I want to use. Here, admin, living dangerously. When you are creating a kind of production instantiation of this, you really should think about scoping it down to the precise users and the precise permissions that you want to use. So, I mean, a lot of you probably familiar using Postgres in the past. Mm-hmm. DSQL is a Postgres-compatible database. Everything you know about Postgres in terms of roles and users still applies. You can scope down a role. You can give it access to a schema, or read-only access or write-only access. And that still applies here. It's about scoping your servers and your configuration down to that minimal access for security.
And I also see that you're auto-approving reads, but not writes.
Yeah, exactly. That's another thing that you can do. You can say, okay, with this configuration, MCP, you want to auto-approve certain tools. Mm-hmm. In my dev environment, I'm thinking reads are fine. Just go ahead, read the data and spit it back to me. It's my data in the first place. So let's take a look at how the MCP can kind of interact with my cluster and see what schemas do I have in my DSQL cluster. So a lot of this might be familiar if you've already been following us along these presentations and kind of seen gyms earlier. In much the same way, the DSQL MCP server is able to kind of make these read transactions against the database, figure out what's going on. Okay, so you can see I've loaded up the IMDb database there.
Yep.
I've got a couple of little bit of information. What tables do I have?
There's that talking to the database that we were saying before.
Somebody's got to put it in line. Somebody's got to talk to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's such a powerful thing to be able to talk to your database in natural language. You know, I don't have to kind of think of exactly what are the SQL queries that I'm writing in any one moment. Like all of that kind of losing context. Like
I don't know, Ben. Everybody has been talking about natural language. What is an unnatural language?
what is an
Please do
unnatural language?
tell.
I mean, there are some programming languages out there I would certainly consider unnatural.
We're not using any of those. So.
No. So yeah, maybe I could ask it, what does the data in episodes look like? And it's probably going to go and get me a sample and tell me, and that's going to be helpful for if I'm using this in developing, and I want to figure out exactly, okay, what's the current shape of my dev database? How could I make these new queries or these new features that I'm working on work with it?
I also see that you're very trusting of your MCP. Jimbo wasn't. He was saying yes every time. You're just like, I trust you.
Read-only query. I mean, that's the benefit. You can, because these MCPs provide different kind of tools, they allow you to really focus on, okay, what's allowed with this one. With read-only query, I know that's only going to be reading data. It's not going to be writing anything.
Sure, makes sense to me.
So I'm fine with that. Okay. So yeah, that's a little introduction to how you might use it in a dev environment. Why don't we get into the Strands agents and see how easy it is to build an agent and kind of demystify that part of things. So you see here, I've got a little Python script, and if you can read those 5 lines, that's how you create an agent.
Wow. 1, 2,
Just
3,
like
4,
that.
5. Literally 5 lines.
5 lines.
Yeah. So it's not much. Like here in the background, Strands is using Bedrock for me, and you can provide your own model provider. If you have a locally hosted model, if you're with any other API provider, and all that is the LLM that's backing it. So Strands is doing the kind of heavy lifting of orchestrating. I'm going to send this response. I'm going to get some tokens back. I'm going to get some information back, and then figure out what to do next. But the model, you get to pick that. You see here, I'm using Claude 3.5 Sonnet. I think it's a pretty good one. It's working well for my purposes. And you see also I have a system prompt. And this is kind of telling the model what it can do, or telling the agent rather what it can do. This is what you really want to think about when you're kind of like programming these agents. I'm telling it, it's got access to this IMDb database with this schema, and I'm asking it to answer questions about movies using these appropriate indexes.
Sure.
So you're thinking like, how does it know that it has access to that database?
It's got to go ask.
Yeah.
It's got to go ask. And this is the kind of magic of like how you insert that into the agent. You tell it which tools it has. Here I've given it the DSQL client, and up here is where we set that. And it looks exactly like the configuration I had for QChat, right? I'm telling it the cluster endpoint, telling it the region, the database user. So let's see what it's like to run a little simple query against that. So I've got
I think this
here.
is why they say the MCP is like the USB-C of the internet, right? Like you have the same configurations regardless of what tool you're using.
Yeah. That's the really great thing about a flexible protocol. When you think about so many advancements in programming and technology, they're better and better abstractions that let us build on top of other things like HTTP, the web in general, and MCP is kind of a new layer of that. Well, it's very, very new. Only came out in November. It's being used more and more.
Yeah, it has proliferated already so much because of that simplicity.
Yeah, I think people really appreciate the flexibility.
Yeah, speaking of flexible, I do fancy myself a bit of a movie buff. When we were talking with Jimbo about his favorite movie, which, for the record, if you didn't catch it, was My Cousin Vinny. You're asking here in your program to go out and search the IMDb database looking for anything with Aurora in the title.
Yeah.
And for the life of me, I could only think of 2, and it was number 3 and number 4 on this list. This is crazy.
Yeah, so it's gone out and it's kind of fetched that information for me. It's able to answer my query, as vague as it is and as general as it is. And now it's come back with a lot of information, and I didn't have to write a lick of SQL.
You know what? I have an idea. Why don't we turn these 4 hours into an Aurora movie?
Let's do it.
Gonna get some birthday theme in there as well.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, that's not the only thing that you can do with the agents. You can also feed the output of one into the other. You got to
Interesting.
remember that agents in the end are just programs, and they, just like other programs, they output stuff. So you can see here, I've got this kind of multiple agent setup. I'm creating one first, and then putting in this like initial prompt where I'm asking it to explore and describe the database schema that there is. And then I take that prompt, that DB info prompt, and feed it in as the system prompt to another agent, which I can then use to query the database further. So it's like the first one, if you'll notice, the first one kind of struggled with the queries there. It had to take a couple of attempts. And that's the cool thing about these agents is they are able to like fail, get some things wrong, and then learn and adapt. Where with a human, it would take me a couple of attempts to write the exact SQL query that I want.
Lots of Googling, lots of forehead against the desk, lots of frustration, lots of, isn't it working? Like
Yeah.
I may have done
And I
last
love
week.
how polite they are too. Like they
Oops,
apologize.
I'm sorry, I couldn't do it.
Yeah, they are very polite. But we can take that info that the first agent has kind of output for us, and feed that into another one, which would then be better set up to answer our questions. And kind of what I'm getting at here is more the general principle of using these as components of a broader system. While this is a super simple example in and of itself, get some information about this database and help me query it, you can integrate that wherever you like in your programming lifecycle, whether that's in prototyping an application or as part of a component in a broader, more reliable system.
Yeah. And, I asked this question to Cheyenne earlier before as well. Like, this seems like a fairly complicated thing to do, but how long did it take for you to program this with MCP?
It was really brief. I mean, you can see the files of code. We've put them up on GitHub as well, so they should be available for you guys at home to kind of follow along and look at the code that we're running. It didn't take me long at all. Under a day to go through all three of these examples here and get them to a working state. Whereas
And Cheyenne and me, in fact, we're not hardcore developers. Cheyenne said it would have taken him 6 months. You are like in the thick of it, like you're developing every day. You're an SDE. What do you think that differentiation is for you? Like how long would it have taken you without an MCP?
I mean, for similar applications, like a week, couple of weeks.
Wow.
Just to do those components.
Wow.
And I think the benefit of these, so we've gone through this kind of dynamic query. You'll see that the first agent spit out all this information and then helps the next agent kind of query and say, help it ask better questions or respond better. Let's move on to the kind of multi-agent application that I wanted to talk about.
Okay, yeah.
This is kind of more of a like full end-to-end application where I'm getting data from one place, I'm putting it in my DSQL database, and then I'm trying to get it out at the other end. Because I think this is the thing that would take me a much longer time to kind of do each component, whereas with these strands, with these agents, I can really prototype an end-to-end application in under a day.
Wow. That is amazing.
So what I have here is a couple of agent prompts. Again, the first kind of setting up the database. I wanted to set up a schema for storing this information, gathering this kind of information. So I've got some kind of like data source for these news articles. And then I have another prompt that handles reading these news articles from the source. Here they're just files from disk, but you could imagine they're an API, which it's going and fetching, it's reading, and insert data about that into the database. And then finally, I have one at the end, which takes that information, the schema, just like we were doing before, and helps me read it out again. So let's see what that looks like to run.
Okay, well, let's see. What have we got here? We got cooking.
So this is the part that's inserting the data. So I'm spinning this off in a thread.
Okay.
So you see here, it's just starting to chew through them.
Now, I was about to ask the chat, how long do you think this was going to take? But never mind. I'll shut up.
Well, at least it doesn't say perfect every time it goes.
Hey, well, nobody's perfect.
Nobody's perfect. Okay, and then off in this one, let's do the part where we can query that database at the end of the day and see kind of what data that this other agent is putting in.
Okay.
So this is when I refer to them, and that setup's already complete. So can you tell me about some articles on AI in the database?
You guys have impressive typing.
That is one of the biggest parts of the day job, and you should see the keyboards.
They're all beaten down, worn down, scraped up. Yeah,
Hammered, strange shapes. I know I'm a big fan of Kinesis.
Do you use one of those RGB keyboards? I love those.
I'm not big on the RBG, but it's got to be split. It's got to be split. Cool. And you can see here, so we've got this coordination of two agents. We've got one on the side that's writing, that's already like crafting an input into this database. Mm-hmm. The other one which can take that input and answer some questions for me. Like you can see the training data or the data that I've put into this database is a little behind. But it was able to fetch that kind of no problem, and maybe I could help drill down on a couple more features of each of these.
Mm-hmm. It's a very specific question.
Well, let's see. That was part of what I asked the insert agent, that I wanted it to kind of focus on what locations, the people that were involved, and see if it gives any more information there. Oh. And yeah, you see each of these news articles, they have locations involved that we're able to retrieve nice and easily. And meanwhile, that insert agent is still chugging its way through more and more of these articles.
That's pretty fantastic to see, kind of a peek behind the curtain how the sausage is made. This is, I gotta say, coming from an InfraOps background, this is kind of humbling to see technology used in this way to allow you to be as flexible as your imagination lets you.
It really is. And what I like about this is that it's so extensible. If you want to add, say, I don't know, latitude, longitude, lookup, you just add another tool, and that tool can do that for you. And then you add another tool, and you add another tool, and you just keep extending the functionality of your app. It's so cool.
Just keep iterating. And maybe that was a good time to talk about why we think that DSQL is such a great fit for these kinds of tools, and why we built the MCP server in the first place.
And the question is, can you spend more than $1?
You definitely can. I think if you try hard, you let it run a lot. But yeah, DSQL, because it's pay-as-you-go, because it's fully serverless, because it's zero infrastructure management, this is why we think it's a good fit for these kind of agents. Mm-hmm. You don't have to worry about instance costs being spun up the second you start using something. And so when you're prototyping, or even when you're working on applications that are going to deploy in multiple places, lots and lots of times, you can use a cluster as your unit of isolation. You can start getting those responses back and only pay for what you use.
And then you can extend it across regions and not worry about having a potential failure of an entire region, which is very rare, by the way, or impossible.
Yeah, exactly. Like the single region clusters, those are all redundant across 3 availability zones, and those offer up to 4 nines of availability. The multi-region clusters, in that configuration, you've got 5 nines. So kind of pretty crazy availability. And of course, the durability benefits that come from that, being able to recover at a specific point in time.
I forget. I don't know if our audience knows what is 5 nines of availability. How many seconds or minutes of downtime? I
used to know this. I think it was like 36 minutes per year or something like that.
That's a great question.
Fact check me, chat, please. But we're getting towards the end of the time that we do have here, Ben. We got about 2 minutes. Is there any nuggets of wisdom you'd like to leave for the audience? Some homework, where they can learn to get started, anything like that? Yeah, for sure. I'd really encourage checking out the Strands SDK, checking out the docs on how to get started. DSQL, we have a generous free tier, as Mark was talking about before. So do get started. Do try it out at home and see what you can build. I'd be really excited to see what you can build. We also have the links here to DSQL's MCP server, so you can get started, and the code for my demo. If you want to use that as a launch pad for figuring out, okay, what can I build that's going to be way cooler than this guy's?
Yeah, and easiest way to do that, folks, is by taking those surveys, and first 3,000 of you are going to get $20. Spend some of that money on DSQL, and all of this is on GitHub, right?
Yep. Yeah, all available now.
Awesome. Ben, thank you so much. In chat, I know we had asked you a question earlier about how you should secure your Aurora DSQL MCP. Ben did give us the answer. First, you don't want to pass allow rights blindly. And then, of course, you want to connect with the properly scoped down user with write permissions disabled.
Yep.
Is that about accurate?
Yeah, that's accurate.
Awesome. Ben, thank you so much for hanging out with us today. Folks, stay tuned. We've got one last session that you're not going to want to miss. I have a very, very good feeling that we're going to discover how multi-region active-active works.
Well, we'll see about that.
We'll see. Stay tuned.